I'm going to just begin this morning introducing our first kind of the person who's coordinating the panel, and he'll go on to introduce the rest of the panel. So first this morning we're going to hear from Don Ellisberg. It's a little bit difficult to introduce Don because he has been around the industry and working on the things that we're talking about for many years. Don Ellisberg was working for the Senate and was very instrumental in writing the first occupational safety and health bill that created the agency, and has since at that time been around, has worked for the Department of Labor, been in the solicitor's office over there, has worked with labor, has worked with management, has been in the industry, I would guess some 40 years, Don, and an expert, a nationally recognized expert in occupational safety and health and in many aspects of that. And so I'll turn the time over to Don to introduce the panel who will be presenting the program.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to go through a little bit of a presentation here of what this is all about. It's really a comprehensive work zone program. I will tell you that much of what we have is designed to be taught or instructed on the work sites with work crews, and I'll get to that, but I will also tell you that this morning's presentation is really a challenge to how you can present a program under field conditions, in the dark, without light, and so forth. So if you get any of it today out of all of this, you can see how well it will be if you actually have classroom settings or even the back of a pickup truck where you can communicate. This is a program that, and we welcome everybody here. Now, you'll see from the program, this is set up to be session 1, session 2. What we're going to do is have a short break somewhere along the line between session 1 and session 2. But instead of getting out at 12:15, I've been advised that the class wants to get out about 11:45 for those people who are desperate to get out to the Pittsburgh airport or on the highways around Pittsburgh. So if you'll bear with us for the next couple of hours, we want to take you through this particular project. Next slide. And we have here who put all this together. And you can see a very long list of people who are in the industry, Laborers International Union, the Operating Engineers International, the Road Builders, National Asphalt Pavement Association, and I'm a consultant to them here, the AASHTO, the Texas Transportation Institute, CNA Insurance, enormous amount of input from OSHA, Dave NIOSH, and of course substantial funding from both OSHA and the Federal Highway Administration, because what we're about to show you and hand out to you is all the product of your tax dollars, and it's free. Next slide. Today we're going to have presentations from our pickup band. We have so many people working in this on this project that we all kind of rotate around to these presentations. Today, in addition to myself, we're going to have Scott Schneider, who's with the Labor's Health and Safety Fund, Emmett Russell, who's the Director of Safety and Health for the Operating Engineers, Brad, who I guess you know from the Road Builders, Omar Lopez from the Road Builders, says he's going to do something here. Melissa Finley back over there, if you raise your hand, Melissa, from the Texas Transportation Institute, and Rod Wolford and Beth Olson from FOF Productions that do this production. What we have here in terms of this program that we present to you is a package. Rod, what'd you do to my wires? We have a package, and it's as we'll explain, it's 21 CD modules on this CD. There are training booklets that go with the modules. There's a 98-page and growing instructor's guide. There are toolbox pamphlets that go with each segment. And we also have a big flip book that I don't think we have with us, but it's 24 by 17, and it's the kind of thing where you can take a page, laminated, and it is bilingual in English and Spanish. The actual program itself is in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and all of this is also downloadable from workzonesafety.org, which is the national clearinghouse for this stuff. Next. If you look at this one slide here, it's kind of a summary of what's in this. And what's in this is something for everyone. If you look at the 15 awareness topics and the 7 and growing advanced topics, ranging from disaster response to high-risk night work, lighting, flagging, emergencies, we've got everything here. What I really want to say is that as a result of the 7 years we've been at this with the different groups, we have vetted this material with everybody you can imagine and some you couldn't imagine. It has been up and down the contractor system, the labor organizations, the OSHA, NIOSH, Federal Highway, and anybody else that would like to kibitz. They're all involved here. And what we have and the way we're going to present it today, as I say, it's a little bit like a pickup band. Everyone here has a little piece of it, and it's kind of, they're all going to do their own riff, and you're going to get a taste. We haven't got the full day or so that it really takes to lay this all out, but we do want to give you the flavor of what we have and how we think it might really appeal to the particular segments of this industry and the bridge folks. I said it's multilingual, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. You can switch back and forth as somebody will be demonstrating between the languages. You can do it sentence by sentence. It's slide and interactive, so it depends on who your group is and how you want to present it. One of the high points, and we hope we've got the ability to do it today in this venue, are the demonstrations that are very kind of straightforward and blunt about stopping blind spots, placement of devices, visibility, trenching, heat stress, and a number of others. And I think you will find them both interesting and some kind of gallows humor. Next. When we first started out, this presentation did not really deal with the regulations or the MUTCD. It was best practices. In order to work with some of the OSHA compliance and state compliance people, we did put in what you would call a compliance mode, which is a line by line of standards where you can look at it state by state. You can look at it all the states combined, and there will show you there are ways in which, as you go through, you can click on and go to, in effect, the subtext of what the regulation is. And it's updatable and downloadable. Next slide. So that's in a nutshell, what this is all about. And in order to sort of start the process off, who's starting first? Scott? I'd like to introduce Scott Snyder. He and Emma Russell are kind of a tag team on this next group, and we'll really begin with the show itself, with the what's on the CD here. And before you all leave, you will all walk out with your CD, and you will be happy people. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Don. As Don explained, we started off with this program to develop sort of a basic awareness program that covers the major hazards in road construction and work zone safety. And then what we did is, over the last few years, we said, well, there are a couple areas that are sort of really important that we need to spend more time on. And the two areas we picked out are night work and runovers and backovers. And then we started also developing guidance on some of these other specific issues like speed management and access and egress to the work zone. So this presentation over the next few minutes, we're going to talk about the hazards of night work. Why are we doing this? It's because night work is becoming more and more common in road construction to help, help minimize delays. So anyway, we're going to talk about, first we start off by just showing the initial slide for the roadway safety program. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I don't know any good jokes. Hang on a second. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, it's Don. Okay, go, Don. Oops. Okay. So anyway, so we do have basically. We're going to talk about the hazards of night work. We're going to go over several. We divided night work up into several different modules to talk about what the hazards are. How to use high visibility clothing appropriately, the proper lighting, and other issues. So each of us is going to go over one of those briefly. Okay. So we start off by just showing this slide about who put the program together, and then we're going to go to the first module, which is on night work risks. Okay, why do we focus on night work? Okay, well, for obvious reasons, there are a lot of advantages to doing night work, which I was saying earlier. For example, there's reduced traffic, better access to the work site, etc. Yeah, cooler temperatures, longer work shifts, etc. But on the other hand, there are several concerns that are raised. There are additional safety and health hazards that are posed by this, in particular because you have a lot of, at night, though you have less congestion, you end up having higher traffic speeds because there's not as much congestion. Next slide. Okay, some of the special hazards of night work. We talk about reducing visibility. There's bright work lights that sometimes can cause glare. And often there's alcohol or drug impaired or drowsy drivers, particularly after the bars get out at 2 o'clock in the morning on the weekends. Pedestrians and workers are generally less alert and more tired. There's lower traffic volumes, as I mentioned, so you have higher speeds. There's increased truck traffic at night, long distance truck drivers. And plus you have darkness, which causes shadows, etc. And on the work site itself, if it's not properly lit, there'll be shadows and there may be tripping hazards. People have a lot of slips and falls in road construction. Next. Okay. We talk about how the MUTCD really doesn't have a lot of specifications on night work. So we're really trying to provide some guidance for them. Okay. Keep going. So, and we do have some demonstrations here, some to show what's in the MUTCD, I believe. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so what are the safety enhancements that you need to look at for night work? One thing is obviously high visibility clothing, and we're going to talk about that next in the next module, so I'm going to skip over that. Having channelizing devices that account for longer reaction times, their spacing, temporary work zone lighting, and trying to set it up so it avoids the glare and shadows. Okay, the next slide. And some other safety enhancements that you have to consider. There's increasing the visibility of work vehicles by perhaps using reflective tape on the vehicles themselves and lights. We also talk about internal traffic control plans. Can you hear me back there? No? Okay. If you click on that, we can show the internal traffic control plans. Oh. It's not on there? Okay. Well, we'll get back to that. Internal traffic control plan is basically developing a traffic control plan for inside the work zone. And we're going to talk about that a little more in the next session. Okay, we talk about using high visibility clothing, reflective hard hats, worksite safety training, being familiar with the traffic control plan and the internal traffic control plan, being aware of the nightly changes. Yeah, this shows you a double lane closure. And this is a sample internal traffic control plan, basically. It shows you how to develop a traffic control plan for inside the work site to minimize the amount of backing up that's required, because we know that backing up can cause a lot of hazards for workers. It's the highest risk that workers face in terms of fatality hazards on the job site. Okay. And lastly, we talk about some other things to work safely at night, following various procedures. For example, knowing where the restrooms are so you can have safe routes back and forth to where you're parked. And go ahead. Being aware of project-specific hazards, like for example, there's a risk of contact with power lines, and at night it's particularly difficult because they're not as visible. And knowing which supervisors are responsible for safety. And lastly, with night work, we talk a little bit about the personal hazards, about how you can minimize sleep loss by having sleep schedules, eating properly, drinking lots of water, minimizing the amount of caffeine that you're drinking, particularly so you can sleep during the day, having a sleep routine, and scheduling some sort of family time. So this module really just introduces you to the sort of overall risks that are posed by night work. And then what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about, we have a separate module, talk about high visibility clothing and how you can use that to your advantage to minimize the risk to workers.
Good morning, and thank you, Scott. We'd like to talk about high visibility garments. And I'd like to click on Demo 4. Demo 4 will actually show us. It's a demo that actually shows how high visibility garments actually work. And basically, high visibility garments actually reflect light back to the light source. Okay. And then also, it actually shows the 3 different types of high visibility garment, Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. Okay, this demo is an excellent demo. It actually shows, if you look at the top as the car is moving, you can actually see the advantages of high visibility versus regular clothing or reflective garments. And clearly you can see on the high visibility garment, you can actually see that garment way in advance. Right now he's got street clothing, and you actually have to get up to the person before you actually start seeing the street clothing. And then let's check the fluorescent. On the fluorescent, again, you can see it a little sooner than street clothing, but let's click back to the high visibility, and then you'll actually see the total impact. Retroreflective. Yeah, retroreflective, clearly you can see that far away as opposed to fluorescent or street clothing. And this demonstration just lets everyone know that clearly retroreflective clothing is the best way to actually protect workers in the work zone. Next slide. Okay, and interestingly, through our whole process, every slide starts with asking a question: what is required for worker visibility? In every place you see a number, we actually have a demo. In this demo, they actually show some of the background material for the high visibility garments. Next slide. Which garments should we wear? And this is a good time to talk about the different classes of garment. Clearly, the Federal Highway has come up with a new regulation, and the new regulation says that Class 1 garments are not acceptable, and Class 2 garments are actually required by the regulation. And Class 2 garments should be used anywhere where there is traffic to the public, even in parking lots, where you have a parking lot and the public can actually drive through that parking lot. Then a Class 2 garment has to be worn. So streets, highways, parking lots, anywhere where the public goes. Class 3, it is recommended that Class 3 be worn at night and be worn by flaggers. So again, the regulation says that Class 2 is mandated, and a lot of contractors actually, to provide extra safety, actually will use Class 3 garments all the time. One other thing that you probably should know is on Class 3 garments, we can click on that. On Class 3 garments, there's two ways of meeting the Class 3 requirement. One is to use a Class 3 vest. The other is to use what's called a Class 3 ensemble, which is a Class 2 or Class 3 jacket with the trousers. So again, there's two ways of meeting the Class 3 requirement. Okay, what are the Class 3 garments? And clearly, they show the Class 3 garments. They show examples on how we can see a person and the advantages of using the Class 3 garment. And it shows some of the advantages should be used there when you have high speed, when sight distance is important, working at night, flagging crews, highway crews, utility workers. And we have demos, and again, we have demos all through the program. And here's a demo where they're going to actually show the advantages at day and compare it at night. And let me say, these programs are excellent to actually convince workers why it's important for them to actually wear the garment, enjoy wearing the garment, and properly use the garment. Here's a module on how do we inspect high visibility garments. Keeping them clean, making sure that they have the proper retroreflectivity. Basically, we should not use garments that are worn. What to look for. Here we have a diagram on what is acceptable, what is marginal, and what is unacceptable. And at the bottom, also, if you have internet access, there's actually a brochure from the Michigan Department of Transportation and the Washington State Department of Transportation. It actually gives you a brochure to give you additional details on this. Here it shows a marginal vest, and 3 shows a vest that is completely unacceptable. What is required for vehicle visibility? And again, we talk about how to actually set up vehicles where vehicles are visible using flashing, rotating beacons, adding retroreflective tape, keeping the tape and the flashing clean, and making sure the lights are working properly. What about other work zone items? Use of barriers, channelizing devices, storing work zone items away from the traffic, and also protecting work zones. So again, even though this is kind of quick, but you get a good flavor on high visibility and basically what we are trying to project.